Islam had risen on the Arabian Peninsula in the early 7th century, and it continues to spread until after the death of Muhammad, its founder, in 632. Under the leadership of the Umayyad dynasty, the Muslim territory expands into Europe, and by 710 they control North Africa, and in 711 they move across the Strait of Gibraltar, which you should know where that is now based on identifying that on your map, and they invade the Iberian Peninsula. The Iberian Peninsula is modern-day Spain and Portugal. By 725, the Muslims are going to control most of Spain, with the city of Cordoba acting as the Muslim capital. So Muslim innovations are going to have a significant impact on Spain, and we talked about this in class. In agriculture, the Muslims introduced new crops such as oranges, dates, and rice, as well as new methods of irrigation that are going to significantly improve their productivity. Muslim architects are going to introduce new designs that are going to influence the building in Spain for years. Numerous mosques and palaces are going to be built, including one in Granada and a great mosque in Cordoba. And they're going to be constructed with very complex interiors consisting of a multitude of low, round arches made of alternating black and white stones. And in addition, Arabic knowledge in science, mathematics, and medicine is going to be far superior to anything Europe had at the time. For example, Arabic numerals instead of the Roman numerals, which are the numbers that we know today, 1, 2, 3, became the standard in algebra, mathematics, astronomy, and physics. And Muslims are also going to introduce the concept of zero to Europe. So let's talk about the Reconquista. Again, something that we've revisited in class. The Iberian Peninsula. Remember, when we say the Iberian Peninsula, we're talking about where Spain and Portugal are located. It's going to be dominated by the Muslims for about 800 years, a rule which begins in the 8th century. The Reconquista will be the struggle between the Christians and the Muslims to gain control of the territory. It's going to happen across several centuries. So from 718 to 1492, and that date should look familiar to you, over this time, Christian forces are going to slowly push the Muslims south. The Reconquista is going to leave Spain divided, as the region is going to develop a separate government after gaining its autonomy from the Muslims. So the majority of Spain is finally going to be unified under King Ferdinand of Aragon and Queen Isabella of Castile, with the final expulsion of the Muslims in 1492. And remember the significance of this. It is going to leave them available time-wise, money-wise, and focus on when a certain Christopher Columbus approaches them, asking them, can you finance my mission to find a quicker water route to the West Indies? And in 1492, they're able to tell him yes. And we know that leads to the, not really the discovery, but the awareness of the North and South American continents that we inhabit today. The Crusades. The term crusade refers to in general, a holy war. However, it's most closely associated with this medieval era crusades that went on from 1095 to 1291. With the death of Charlemagne and his empire collapsing, the Muslim invasion of Spain, and then the fact that the Muslims had gained control of the Holy Land, it's going to make Christian Europe feel as if they're under attack. So some of the Crusades were launched in an attempt to convert large numbers of non-believers, and others are going to be launched to fight against behavior and beliefs that the Christian church are going to find offensive. The crusade targets heretics and other Christians who don't conform, and non-Christians, especially those of the Muslim faith. Finally, Crusaders are going to fight to regain control of the Holy Land from the Muslims. Pope Urban II, who will reign from 1042 to 1099. It's going to spark the first crusade by giving this dramatic plea to a crowd in France in 1095. And he's going to ask for warriors to organize and to travel to the Middle East to liberate the Holy Land from the Muslims. And what you see over here in this picture is a painting, representation of him calling for these Christians to take back the land. The Pope promised spiritual rewards for the fighters, including forgiveness of their sins, in exchange for their service, and the speech was so effective that thousands of soldiers are going to march east the next year to retake the Holy Land. So let's talk about that. The First Crusade from 1096 to 1099. French Crusader knights are referred to as pilgrims. They're going to leave Europe to liberate the Holy Lands from the Muslims in 1096. The army travels first to Constantinople and then to the Middle East, drawing out Muslim fighters throughout their journey. They're going to be able to capture Jerusalem by 1099 after a siege that lasts for several weeks. And after breaking through the city walls, they kill almost every non-Christian that they come across. They also kill several Christians that they're going to mistake for Muslims or Jews. As a result of the First Crusade, several smaller Crusade states were created, most notably the Kingdom of Jerusalem. And these states were isolated amid Muslim territory, so were surrounded by Muslim territory. However, in the 1100s, the Muslims began to retake them. And in 1187, forces led by the great Muslim commander Saladin are going to recapture Jerusalem. What are the other crusades that we need to talk about? 3 major and several minor crusades followed that initial one in 1096. And they're all going to fail in that the Holy Land was never returned to Christian hands. Pope Urban showed moral leadership in 1095, but the popes that follow Pope Urban are going to invoke crusades too frequently and over less significant matters. The later crusades are going to become more worldly and less spiritual in purpose. For example, on his return from the Third Crusade, King Richard I of England, also known as Richard the Lionheart, was captured by his enemy, Duke Leopold of Austria, and held for ransom. And in the 13th century, the city-state of Venice had managed to get the Frankish soldiers on the Fourth Crusade to attack and conquer Constantinople, which was not even a Muslim stronghold. So they're going to use the Crusades as justification for conquest rather than just to simply be on this pilgrimage to retake the Holy Land. And all the Crusades put the Holy Land under Christian control for only a brief period of time. The Crusades are going to, however, lead to an increase in trade as new cross-Mediterranean trade routes are going to arise in order to supply these crusaders. The rise in trade also helped spur the growth of towns and cities in Europe, and it's going to give rise to a new class of urban merchants, which is going to be important as we move out of these Middle Ages and into this Renaissance time period. In addition, these crusades are not only going to drive apart Christians, Jews, and Muslims in a rift that arguably still has implications today, but it's also going to make a tense relationship between the Catholic Church in Western Europe and the Orthodox Church in the Byzantine Empire, and it's going to even fracture that relationship even further. Let's look at these discussion questions if you'll write these in your notes. Question number 1. The presence of Muslims in Spain had a huge impact on that land even after the Reconquista had returned those lands to Christian control. In what ways might the Muslim presence in Spain have made that land different from other European kingdoms of the Middle Ages? In 1095, when Pope Urban II called for a crusade to gain control over the Holy Land, many Europeans felt that they were still under attack by Muslims. Why might they have felt that way in 1095? Number 3, given there are a variety of crusades between 1095 and 1291, what other motives do you think led many Europeans to support and take part in crusades?